Welcome back to the channel, my friends. I hope you're having a wonderful beginning of a new year, and hopefully a wonderful whole rest of your year. And today, I am bringing you the second to last chapter of the Pentateuch series, the first 5 books. Literally coming down the home stretch. Finally getting done with this ridiculously long book. But as much as I have forgotten, there is still interesting things in every single chapter to discuss. Good and bad. So, we should probably get to it, then, shouldn't we? And, well, obviously, you know, I'm renting a room somewhere, so, if you hear things in the background, it's probably neighbors or, their pets, possibly. But if you hear any sort of, mechanical whizzing or anything like that, it's my cat chasing this. And it's actually pretty good. He likes it quite a bit. It's not like they're really loud or anything. I'm not really sure how much noise my phone picks up. But if you have a cat, you should get them a speedy sprint ball, because you don't need batteries for it. You can just recharge it. So that's what he's going to be dealing with. And I hope you're ready for today, because we have quite the information to cover. So, of course, we should start things off with a little burning bush. Damn it. So, something about these speedy balls is that even though they're advertised in that they don't get stuck, they can get stuck. You'd be surprised. But it is still an excellent toy. It got stuck. And I've dedicated a lot of time, a lot of trial and error, to try and make sure this thing would not go out of my cat's reach. Or so that it would not get stuck anywhere, so that it would just keep on moving. So, yeah, keep that in mind when you buy one of these things, but it is still 100% worth it. I'm not in a position to afford another cat for him to stay entertained with. The one window that I have in my room is, well, I'm in a basement, so it's not much of a window. And it doesn't have a great setup around it. It's not great for cats to get to, so he's very limited on what he can do to enjoy himself, but this speedy ball helps a lot. I'm getting him a cat treadmill. Well, a friend is giving me a cat treadmill that I'm picking up this weekend, actually. So, hopefully I can get him to exercise a little bit more. But oh, well. Enough about my cat. Let's get back to the Bible, right after I go unstuck his toy. That took way longer than it should have. Not because I had a hard time getting it unstuck, but because it kept getting stuck. I'd come back to sit down and it would almost immediately find somewhere else to get stuck. That's the thing about this toy. That is the one downside. You really, really, really have to make sure that thing is not going to get stuck somewhere and go somewhere that you can't reach. A lot of times it is designed to actually come back. Well, may not come back to you necessarily, but it is designed to reverse itself and change directions at random. That way it never gets stuck. And, that's the promise, but that's not always how it works. It does work great across carpet. It did accurately advertise that. And it is... Yeah, he's loving the shit out of it. But, yeah... You gotta keep an eye... You kind of have to keep an eye on it. It also doesn't stay on super long. It does shut off even when it's even if it never gets stuck. It will shut off after maybe about 5-10 minutes. And charge doesn't take too long to recharge either. At least not on a faster cord like I have. But anyways, I did not intend for this to turn into a whole cat toy review. Let's get back to reviewing what we came here to review. And people say you can't multitask. Alright, so we are on chapter 26 today. And we're going to start off on a fairly positive note. Isn't that wonderful? Enjoy it while it lasts. So what we have here, and I'm actually just going to read some, 3 verses actually, because they're a little scattered apart. But I'm reading these 3 so that you know a little bit more of what's going down. They're kind of sort of talking about sacrifices and offerings again, but this is a specific kind. Specifically, the first fruits of a harvest. And so they are to gather their harvest together, and then they are to take... it doesn't exactly say. I'm not seeing it. But verse 2. That thou shalt take of the first of all the fruit of the earth, which thou shalt bring of thy land, that the Lord thy God giveth thee, and shalt put it in a basket, and shalt go into the place which the Lord thy God shall choose to place his name there. It just says to put it in a basket. I could have sworn they had an actual measurement in here somewhere, but whatever a basket's worth is. I thought it was like at least 10% or something. Maybe I'm thinking of a completely different passage. And what are they to do with this? This is taking it to a place that the Lord chooses? What the heck is that all about? Well, skip on over to verse 4. It says, the priest shall take the basket out of thine hand. So you're taking it to the priests ultimately, but that's not the final destination either. And set it down before the altar of the Lord. What are they doing with it? Verse 12. When thou hast made an end of tithing all the tithes of thine increase the 3rd year, which is the year of tithing, and hast given it unto the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, that they may eat within thy gates and be filled. This is a bit of a filler verse, but this is what they are meant to do with these tithes. To give their food, their first fruits, their 10% or whatever it is that they're giving. I'm not seeing 10% here, but they are using the word tithe, okay? They are to give this food to the Levites, first off, of course, because they're the chosen people. They're the chosen of the chosen people. Levites, 12 tribes of Israel. The Levites are the priest tribe, so they're going to get a portion of this. But not just them. To the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I would maybe switch the Levites out for, artists. Because they don't get paid shit. At least not the majority of them that struggle to make a living off that shit. But this is otherwise really good. This is exactly what churches should be doing with their money. Instead of building bigger places, nicer pools, or baptismals, or better auditoriums, or whatever. Yeah, I understand basic upkeep for a location like that. I understand. But going over the top into, like, the mega church ordeal, like, and those places get insanely fancy. And they're paying for their youths, their kids, the younger members of the church to go overseas, or that's if they're actually doing a missions trip. But a lot of the times, what are they spending that money on? Oh, entertainment for the kids. Finding ways to build up their own religion, their own aesthetics to their building, to their, to drawing people into their cult, instead of just helping people. You want to draw people into your cult? Help people. Just fucking help them. Stop trying to draw them in. Drop that shit. Stop making it about your religion and just help people. Like, that's really all that Jesus was about. He wasn't telling people, well, okay, obviously according to the Bible, according to the version of the texts that we have, though Jesus may not have actually said it, according to the text that we have, he supposedly said, believe in me. But he said that like once, twice, not that many times compared to how many times he kept saying and making parables about be nice to each other. Almost like that was kind of the main reason why he was there to begin with, to just try and help people become nicer to each other. And this little passage is kind of roughly the same sentiment. That's great. And it would actually be really awesome. I mean, you wanna let churches and all that keep what they get, okay. But what if there was what if instead of tithing to church, people tithed to a charity that was non-religious and just helped people, like that's all it did? I think people would be a lot more willing to give up their extra change to something like that. There are a lot of people that would much rather give to like St. John's Hospital for Children or whatever than, well, okay, that is St. John, so it's religious in the name. But my point is, people would rather donate to like a children's hospital that doesn't care so much about, the religion and all that, than giving it straight to a church. Because you give your money to a church, that's not just going to keep the lights on, that's going to make things, depending on the church and the pastor, a lot of pastors, that goes into the pastor's pocket. a lot more than what they need. To the point to where you get all these preachers with yachts, jets, mansions, nice cars. And I'm sure the Levites had that going for them too. But in a perfectly run society, if we ever get to achieve that for a little while, because it will definitely not be permanent, but if we can actually, achieve some sort of time period where we actually defeat homelessness and poverty, it would be because we applied these type of rules and we tithed to these sorts of things instead of to church. Just my thoughts on that. But anyways, all right, that's enough praising the Bible for now. Now for a fun little tidbit I noticed in between all these verses. And I'm not going to dwell too long on it, but I just found this very fascinating because it's the origin of the Israelites. Specifically, their nation of origin. And it's not talked about much otherwise. In fact, there's a lot of debate as specifically where Abraham was even born. But Abraham is not even the one being mentioned here in this verse that I'm about to share with you. And just so that you have some context as to what is being talked about, or what they're saying, who they're speaking to, and all that. This is something that they have to recite. This is during this particular time when they're bringing their tithes in and everything. They've brought the first fruits of their harvest. They've put it in a basket. They gave it to the priest, and now they are supposed to recite as part of tradition and celebrating their history and all that. This is all part of the shindig that God/Moses is commanding here. Verse 5. This is right after they've given their first fruits in the baskets to the priest. And it says, "And thou shalt speak and say before the Lord thy God, a Syrian, ready to perish, was my father. And he went down into Egypt, and sojourned there with a few, and became there a nation, great, mighty, and populous." So who exactly is that person that they're calling a Syrian? I stupidly thought it was Abraham at first, but it's not. Because even though he did go to Egypt, that's not... Well, actually, this... Oh, shit. No. No, this could not be Abraham. Because even though he did... I think he did go to Egypt. I'm pretty sure. But it doesn't line up. Because even though he may have gone to Egypt, and for the same reason, he did not stay in Egypt. In fact, he was already a pretty wealthy guy. But he didn't turn into a nation there. Who in his lineage went to Egypt and eventually became a great nation? It was Isaac. Isaac, when he was very old, went to Egypt because his second to youngest son was Joseph was there. You remember the story? His other brothers, his 10 older brothers, sold him as a slave. And then, yes, then the famine happened, and then they all went there. They discovered Joseph was still alive, and not only alive, but literally running the kingdom for Pharaoh, or at least a lot of it. And then, yeah, they set up shop, and then Exodus happened. But I just thought that was very interesting to note. They're not even calling Abraham Assyrian, they're calling Isaac Assyrian. And if Isaac was Assyrian, then Abraham most definitely was too. And I just find that very fascinating because, I mean, I've been thinking about it, and I've been wondering, what do you call a Hebrew or a Jew that doesn't practice their religion? And historically speaking, at least according to the King James Bible, now we know they are Syrians. And if they follow Yahweh, then they are Jews, Hebrews. Because, for whatever reason, Jew and Hebrew have always referred to the religious aspect of the faith. And I came across it online. The official term for Jews who don't practice Judaism, I believe it was called non-Jews, or was it non-Jews, ex-Jews, something like that. It was something unusual. It didn't really make sense. It was like, I don't know, almost seemed redundant. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. But mainly because it still had the word Jew in it, like almost ex-Jew, or it was probably something more like that. Of course, we do have the very modern, nationalized version of them that we can just call Israelis, which, thank goodness for that. That simplifies it a lot. But when it comes right down to it, originally, Jews are Syrians. They're just really serious Syrians. So serious they became Jews. And then we come to this second to last verse. I also find rather interesting. Verse 18. It says, "And the Lord hath avouched thee this day to be his peculiar people, as he hath promised thee, and that thou shouldst keep all his commandments." And the reason why I find that interesting is because God is directly saying that these people, his chosen people, are meant to be peculiar, different, to stand out. And yet when we read all those verses about slavery, sexism, selling daughters into slavery, unaliving them if they don't have their virginity on their wedding night, in a very brutal fashion, how they are told to treat strangers, foreigners, in very opposite ways. Sometimes they're told to treat them nicely, like in the beginning, or like in verse 12 here, to where the strangers get food, free food. That's fantastic. But then we have these other times where, if they're strangers and they're not, and they're practicing their free will, they can get executed for that. Or if they're strangers in a foreign nation, the genocide that can occur, the forced marriage that can occur, taking of slaves. is mentioned multiple times. How to marry a slave is one of the rules that's laid out at least once, if not twice. For some reason, the Bible likes to repeat itself occasionally. And not always with the same details, as we have discovered. But yeah, if these, I think if God really wanted the Israelites to be peculiar and different, morally superior, he should have had them being the first ones to start banning slavery. Start saying that's a terrible thing. We're not going to do that. You're going to be my peculiar people. You are going to be morally upstanding nation of the entire world. All the world will look up to you because you banned slavery first. Hell no. Hell no. And a lot of Christians who have not read the Bible mistake it often for bondservants, and that they would always be freed at some point, so they were more like employees. No, they weren't. We had a passage about their employees allowed to be beaten too. As long as they don't die. They can be beaten within an inch of their life, but as long as they don't die, beat them as much as you want, basically. I mean, I'm sure they weren't all like that. They didn't actually say beat them as much as you want. In fact, I'm pretty sure there was something about you're not supposed to be cruel to them, but on the other hand, they're also unaliving people for practicing their own religions, or suggesting trying out other religions. In fact, you are literally commanded in the Bible to unalive your own relatives, or friends, if they suggest following other gods other than Yahweh. And, well, that kind of brings us to the next chunk of Scripture. And this is quite a chunk. It is... You ever heard of a compliment sandwich? Where you're critiquing someone, like your friend sings you a song, and because they want to know what you think of their talent and everything, and so they sing for you, and then you give them a compliment sandwich, which is compliment, a criticism, nothing too heavy, nothing harsh, but great choice of song could be the first compliment. And maybe great start off or whatever. The middle. You were a little pitchy on a few parts. And then you end with another compliment and some encouragement. But I liked the bravado and gusto, and if you just put in a little bit more practice, you could sound really good. That is a compliment sandwich. What God provides here is a curse sandwich. And it's exactly the opposite. Basically the exact opposite of a compliment sandwich. But to be fair, I had to give these first set of curses the green light. I really did. Now, the second set of curses, that's a different story. But just listen to these, because these are actually pretty good. Verse 16 of chapter 29. Cursed be he that setteth light by his father or his mother. Basically, that means to mock them, to mock the parents, or to disrespect them. I'm assuming it's something pretty strong, I would imagine, but basically, disrespecting your parents is heavily frowned upon in the Bible. And if you know the Bible, you know this is not the only place. Cursed be he that... Oh, and by the way, after every single one of these verses, I'm only reading it this one time so that you know what it says, but literally at the end of all these verses, it says, and all the people shall say amen. So, just so you know, I'm not reading that shit over and over again every single time. I did enough of that when I was a kid, reading this daily devotions with my family. Cursed be he that maketh the blind to wander out of the way. Yeah. Basically being a bully to blind people. Yeah, screw those fuckers. I'm on board with that. Cursed be he that perverteth the judgment of the stranger, fatherless, and widow. There's that happy trio again, being vehemently defended. Hell yeah. I mean, they shouldn't be perverting judgment for anyone, period. Kind of makes it sound like there's an exception for everyone else, but definitely no exceptions for the stranger, fatherless, and widow. Cursed be he that lieth with his father's wife, because he uncovereth his father's skirt. In fact, that's kind of an ongoing theme here that it continues on for a few verses about... Well, some of it's incest. For some reason, he doesn't really stick to the same theme. It kind of bounces around here a little bit. But yeah, basically, don't commit incest with... I don't know why they feel the need to spell it out with every single individual. It's maybe it's because some of them married their cousins, so they had to be specific. Don't do it with your mother, with your sister, or sibling. Like, I don't know why they couldn't just say your sibling or your parent. Like, just... No, they like to spell it out. Don't do it with these individual members, because the rest of them are fine. Rebecca was technically I don't know if she was a second cousin or a third cousin or something like that. She was definitely a relative of Isaac, though. They did that on purpose, too. Cursed be he that lieth with any manner of beast. So, very anti-bestiality. In fact, that's punishable by death in other parts of the Bible. Cursed be he that lieth with his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother. So, maybe step-siblings are allowed. Just not direct ones. Maybe I have that wrong. I don't know. The father... It seems like it's a direct relative. Doesn't say anything about step-siblings. Probably because they're not directly related. So, I don't know. The Bible is a mystery on what it decides to leave out. I mean... Yeah, I guess Moses could not have thought of everything. They certainly did not think of transgenders, because those people are not in the Bible, for sure. So it makes me wonder Well, no, actually, we already know. We already know what what Yahweh would think of them because of how Israel tends to treat gays and queers and the whole LGBT community. Cursed be he that lieth with his mother-in-law. Oh, well, they're not even related, so maybe there are some exceptions in here. Cursed be he that smiteth his neighbor. Oh, we're switching it up now. Cursed be he that smiteth his neighbor secretly. But not if he does it in public? I don't know. Cursed be he that taketh reward to slay an innocent person. So, being paid to murder someone, basically. And cursed be he that confirmeth not all the words of this law to do them. I don't know how I feel about that one. Cursed be he that confirmeth not all the words of this law to do them. Yeah, he's basically saying, cursed is anyone that doesn't do as I tell them. Cursed is anyone who uses their free will to not live exactly as I tell them. So that one's kind of up. But the rest of them are great. I'm cool with literally all of these. I mean, I don't know why he has to say, cursed be he, you know. I mean, he already gave laws about every single one of these, in fact. At least 90% of them. I know he had laws about a bunch of these. So I really don't know why he bothers to take the time to repeat things just for this portion. And that's Moses I'm talking about. Yahweh, we could say all day, oh, that just shows Yahweh's emphasis of how much he hates these things. Fine. Whatever. But Moses repeating this stuff. We have proven that Moses is no perfect human being at all. He is far from it. In fact, he is probably a scammer, if anything. A Joel Osteen of his time. And then we have the blessings. And I'm not going to read these to you because, I mean, they're just blessings. They're just. I mean, it's great, but this is what he's saying. This is what you get for obeying my insane commandments, and of course it's gonna be nothing but good. That's gonna be in there, but there's nothing really. There's nothing, no lesson, no morals or anything like that. It's just God saying what he's going to do if everyone does what he tells them to. But the important thing to understand here is that in chapter 28, where this is happening, God only spends 14 verses talking about all the good things that he'll do for the people who obey him. 14 verses. Maybe that might sound like a lot to you. Most chapters in the Bible are, between 20 and 30 verses long. Some can be a lot shorter, some can be a lot longer, but the average is 20 to 30. chapter 28 in Deuteronomy is 68 verses long, and only 14 of them are about the blessings. The rest of them are all about what God will do to them if they disobey him. And obviously I'm not going to read them all, but I'm going to read the highlights. So, let's read the very first one just to kick things off. Maybe I'll read some of these shorter ones just so that you get an idea of some of the things that he's talking about. Just to warm you up. Okay, so you've decided not to obey the madly jealous Yahweh. This is what he's going to do to you. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. I wonder if that means even if you only miss one, then all these curses come down on you. Wouldn't that suck? You manage to remember to keep up with everything that is laid out. You keep up with the sacrifices, you keep up with the offerings, you even do the free will offerings. But you forgot one of them. You mixed your linens. You had some shellfish. Or some pork. You forgot one thing. One fucking thing. Straight to hell. Seems like it. You get all these curses. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Your harvest, basically. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kine, and the flocks of thy sheep. He's like cursing everything, like your offspring, your pet, your cattle's offspring, your crops, whatever you have, God is cursing it. Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shall thou be when thou goest out. So it's like that. He gets a lot more detailed. I mean, fuck it. Here's one more example. The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke in all that thou settest thine hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings wherewith by thou hast forsaken me. And it's just that, on and on and on. For the whole rest of the chapter, just ranting and raving about, this is what I'm going to do to you if you backstab me. It's almost like a psychotic child throwing a temper tantrum. But here are the verses I want to focus on that are just, in my it's fucked up. Like he's sending sicknesses and shit down. Like the verse right before is like, the Lord will smite thee with the botch of Egypt, and with the emerods, and with the scab, and with the itch whereof thou canst not be healed. Like, it is fucked what God is threatening to do. But then he hits him with this one. The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart. I don't know what astonishment of heart means. Maybe it's like prone to heart attacks. I don't know. Easily surprised, frightened. I don't know. But smite thee with madness? He's gonna purposefully make them mentally crazy. Or he's gonna make them do stupid things they normally wouldn't do. The Lord shall smite thee with madness. How fucked up is that? It's like it's like punishing a criminal by putting a mindset on them that is just going to make them act even more like a criminal. Like, makes them even worse. Like, instead of actually helping them to become better, you just torture them and give them every reason to hate you all the more and to want to commit crimes. Like, why would you do that? That is so the opposite. But God wants to make him insane. He wants to make them do crazy shit. He wants to make them behave not right in the head. Just like he did with Pharaoh in Egypt. Which was, I think it was 11? It was somewhere between like 10 and 15 times where it straight up says, and God hardened the heart of Pharaoh. You know, what would have happened if God wasn't hardening Pharaoh's heart? The Egyptians would have let the Israelites go way sooner, and a lot less people would have died. But God kept hardening his heart, so Pharaoh kept acting like a fucking idiot. And here, the Lord shall smite thee with madness. God will make you a fucking idiot for not following him. He will make you even more lost than you already are. Where's the sense in that? Where's the mercy and full of kindness and compassion and all that shit? It is not here. It is not in chapter 28, verses 15 through 68. And then on top of that, verse 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto other people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. What happened to chapter 24, verse 16, though? Because that verse says, the fathers shall not be put to death for the children, neither shall the children be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin. Now, granted, this isn't saying, well, not in this verse, it's not saying in this verse that they're going to be killed, but they are being punished. They're being taken away from their parents. They're being punished just as much as the parents are. So that kind of goes against that a bit. Like, why can't God just punish the people who were responsible for leaving him? Why does he got to punish the children too? Seems like he's kind of going back on his word, or like he can't make up his mind. Verse 41. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. They will be enslaved. That is part of the punishment of leaving God. It doesn't just affect you, it affects your children as well. Even though God just previously said we don't punish the fathers or the parents for the children and the children for the parents. But here God is going to town on both. And it gets even worse. It even says, this is verse 47, because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. Basically saying this, I'm doing all this to you because you're having a shitty attitude. Which is kind of fucked up. It's like, just because, and it's not even that. He's not even saying they're having a shitty attitude. It's just saying, because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness. Meaning, wait, they were serving the Lord, but they just weren't doing it joyfully. They weren't doing it with a smile that day. And he did all this to them for that? Is that the type of God we're dealing with here? That's fucked up. I've been there. I know what it's like to be punished for not having a positive enough of an attitude. Or for not singing loud enough. Or with a joyful spirit unto the Lord. It sucks. It's a lot harder to sing and be joyful at 7 o'clock in the morning when your ass is also hurting. But I've been there and done that. So I understand the sentiment here. And this is kind of the peak. It's not the end, but this right here is the Mount Everest of the whole thing, I would say. And verse 53. And thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body, the flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters, which the Lord thy God hath given thee in the siege and in the straitness wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee. And he goes on in detail. So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children which he shall leave. Verse 56, the tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eye shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter, and toward her young one that cometh out from between her feet, and toward her children which she shall bear. For she shall eat them for want of all things secretly in the siege and straitness, wherewith thine enemy shall distress thee in thy gates. And God is taking credit for this. God literally threatens the Israelites that if they don't obey him, he will make them eat their own children. That's Yahweh. That is literally Yahweh. You say, no way, but Yahweh. from Yahweh. It's right here, Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 58. If thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book, that thou mayest fear this glorious and fearful name, the Lord thy God. The God of making you eat your own children if you don't obey him. Honestly, and okay, what's worse? Because God had this huge thing against this other deity that's mentioned a lot in the Bible called Molech. And it's constantly said, like the phrase, they pass their children through the fire of Molech. Basically saying they sacrifice their children to this god by throwing them into the fire. What is worse? And then Yahweh was against this god, okay? Yahweh is against this fire baby sacrifice of a deity. But what is worse? That or Yahweh making his own people eat their own children, if they disobey him? What is worse? Honestly, I think they're about the same. Maybe even a little bit worse on Yahweh's end, because he's making them eat their own kids. That's fucked up. He's literally, he already said he's making them insane. He's casting mad, how does he put it? Smite thee with madness. I mean, how else are you going to be fine with eating your own children? That's how insane they're going to be. He is going to make them that insane to where they will do that. And pretty sure later on, I think it's Jeremiah or Isaiah, one of the prophet books, they mention that it happens. This straight up happens. According to the Bible, this happens during a siege. And yeah, it's supposedly because they left God or whatever. And God is taking credit for causing them to eat their own children as punishment. And people pray to this God every day. And the way he words it here, just verse 59. Then the Lord will make thy plagues wonderful, and the plagues of thy seed even great plagues, and of long continuance and sore sickness, and of long continuance. Wow, very repetitive. Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which thou wast afraid of, and they shall cleave unto thee. So he is threatening them with every plague that he put the Egyptians through. And, verse 61, also every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, them will the Lord bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. What a loving guy. Oh, and here's, if any of you survive, verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Damn. He's saying they're going to get dragged all the way back to Egypt to be sold, and no one's even going to want to buy them. They're even cheaper than Irish slaves. That cheap. Wow. That's brutal, man. That's pretty brutal. I mean, not as it's more ironic than anything else. Because the real brutality, be honest, is him making them eat their children. I still can't get over that. In fact, you know what? I should probably add that to my notebook. It's gonna have to be a whole new page just for the fucked up threats of God, I guess. But it literally does not get much worse than this right here. I mean, we've talked about some pretty brutal shit that God has commanded to be done, punishments that He has laid out. You know, children, yeah, children, offspring being stoned to death, with rocks. Oh, that virgin one really stands out in my mind. Not being a virgin on the wedding night, being dragged in front of their father's house, and then being pelted to death with rocks. I mean, that's a command by Yahweh. Something He was fine with. That was one of His commandments. So what? You break that law and you preserve the daughter that didn't have her virginity intact on that wedding night. God's going to make you eat your own children? Just for that? Just for not valuing virginity as insanely as Him? Yeah, that's the Bible for you. So, hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we have one more to go. And then we will be starting that book, that religious entertainment fictional book from my childhood for entertainment purposes primarily. Some reviewing, of course, but it's got to be mostly reading. Just straight up story, narration of just something I've always wanted to try my hand at anyways, just for shits and giggles. Not as a career or anything, but just for fun. And historically speaking, it's the perfect timing, because some of the time period that we went through in the Bible includes things pertaining to what this particular book, this Christian fan fiction is about. So I hope you will join me for the last chapter of Deuteronomy, but if not, I'm sure you will enjoy the upcoming series, because it was honestly, I've read that book multiple times, so I know I'm going to enjoy reading through it again. In fact, I already tried and I failed because I suck at reading my way through books now. But hey, doing it on a YouTube channel definitely helps make it happen. So, without any further ado, let's end this fucking episode. You guys have a great rest of your day, and stay safe. And until next time, my friends, farewell.